Whew. All right, sound check, camera check. Hair? Okay. All right, I think we're okay. All right, hi everybody. It's been such a long time since I posted. So much has gone on in the world. There's so many things to talk about. I keep thinking about making these videos, and I'm just too lazy. I want to talk about one of the biggest lies that's been perpetuated in Singapore to this day. And you know, there have been many lies, I'm not gonna lie, in Singaporean history. Here's the one I want to talk about today. The idea that we need economic growth to continue in order for us to be prosperous and happy in our country. Now, if we look at our GDP information, which is basically a proxy for economic growth, we see that the economy has grown continually since about 1965. And the amount of GDP per person, which is basically just economic growth divided by everybody in the country, has also grown pretty much continuously since 1965 as well. And if you compare that to our neighbors down south, you can see that we've outpaced them in this metric. But I think it's important to ask ourselves the question on whether we've actually gotten happier over this entire time period. Like, one of the most important tenets of economic growth is that economic growth makes you happy, then you better have been happier in that time period when we've been growing all the way. So, pause and take a second and think. Are we happier than when we first started out as a nation? We're definitely better off, we're definitely more affluent, we can afford more stuff, but I don't know about happier. And you know, another thing I think about is whether the average person in Singapore is happier than the average person in Malaysia, because technically the data and the economic argument seem to suggest that, well, we should be happier than them. But I just don't think so, and I don't think happiness works that way. It doesn't correlate to economic development. If I look back on my lifetime, the things that give me the greatest happiness are the social relationships that I have and other things that you can't purchase with money. Having money makes life easier, but it doesn't make you happier as a person. I sometimes wonder, about my ancestors in China like hundreds of years ago. Am I happier than they would have been? Because as our economy scales and multiplies over time, theoretically, we all should be happier, many times happier than our ancestors, but I don't think that's true. So I don't necessarily think that economic growth brings happiness, and really then the question is, why do we need to keep growing? Now, the whole reason why I bring all of this up is because economic growth has a very insidious and dark effect on the environment, which is what I care about. So Economics 101 will tell you that there are 4 things that contribute to economic growth. The first is land, which is kind of like just all the resources that you have. Even though it's called land, it includes stuff like water resources, metal resources, timber, your actual land itself, and stuff like that. Everything you need to build stuff. And the second thing is labor, which is human time, human effort, the quality of your labor, number of people working. You get the idea, it's people working on stuff. The other 2 things that grow economies are entrepreneurship and capital. And I don't really want to get into both of those because they're not that relevant. But just know that they're things that help economies grow. So if land and labor are the 2 important things that we need to ensure economies keep growing, then we need to keep getting more land and more labor. And in any economy, what this means is that you're drawing more resources from the environment. You're going to the forest and you're cutting down more trees. Or you're going to the oceans and you're trying to scrape up every single last fish that there is left because you need it in order for your economy to grow. And the catch behind economic growth is that the more growth you need, the more land or resources you require to sustain it. Now, I don't know how much you know about environmental news, but things have been pretty bleak recently. We're running out of forests, our oceans are almost devoid of fish, animals and wildlife everywhere are under assault. So at some point, we're going to draw out the last resource from the earth that it has to provide, and then human civilization will probably collapse. In fact, we're really starting to see some of this now. There is some suggestion that one of the important factors in the Syrian crisis was the fact that there was a drought in the country right before the crisis kind of just sparked. So we're running out of land. Well, how about more labor from people in order to keep the economy growing? Well, in Singapore, that was one of the key reasons why we're trying to stuff 5.9 million people on the tiny island. Because it turns out throwing more people into your economic machine is one of the ways that helps your economy grow. But hey, as it turns out, like resources, you run out of space. There is a physical limit to the number of people you can fit on the island. Now, it's probably not 5.9 million, and it could go up to 12 million, and God knows the government is going to try to stuff as many people as it can on the island, but at some point, it's got to stop. And why not stop now? The only thing is that stopping the import of human bodies into Singapore now will reduce the rate of economic growth that we have. So the government will do it. The other way in which we can increase sort of the amount of labor is making sure that people like you and me work longer work hours. Because hey, if originally you're working 9:30 to 5:30, 8:30 to 6:30 means you've got 2 extra hours in a day, and that's more labor into the growth machine. I'm not sure that's what everybody wants. And I'm not sure we have that many more hours to give anyway. Now, a quick word on capital and entrepreneurship and why I'm not talking about those 2 things. Capital is the stuff that you use to make stuff, and it also is based in resources. You can't have more capital without drawing more resources from the environment. And entrepreneurship is the stuff that goes on inside the heads of people who are supposedly smart, bringing together all the different factors of production in order to make more stuff. But my point is, if we're going to keep pushing the narrative of growth, if we're going to keep desiring that our economies continue to grow, my guess is that life's going to get worse, not better. As you can see, we're stuck in the middle of a climate crisis. Extinction rates are much higher than anything we've ever seen before in human history. And people are overworked and unhappy, especially in Singapore, and we've got too many people on the island anyway. So the conversation that we need to be having is, do we still need to grow? And my answer is no. If you think about the amount of wealth that Singapore has in its totality, we have more than enough money to make sure that everybody is happy and well cared for and satisfied and stuff. The issue is that it's been disproportionately concentrated in the people who live on Sentosa Cove. Now, is there a way that we could get that money from Sentosa Cove redistributed among the population so that people can work shorter hours, we can stop pushing the growth narrative, and things can be better in general? Sure. Most people call that way taxes. And the idea that the rich deserve the money that they earn and it's protected from people and it comes from their own hard work and effort. Number one, is probably not true because advantages in life are a thing and people generally don't just get what they deserve. And number two, it's just a social rule that we all just happen to accept under the common understanding of capitalism. So here's the thing about social rules. We don't necessarily have to accept them. We can change the beliefs, we can change the way we operate, we can change the way that society values certain things. So a potential option if the economy stops growing is to think about how we can redistribute wealth. In Singapore, the highest tax rate is 20%, which is really, really low compared to other countries. And we don't have a tax for capital gains, which means that taxes on investments that people engage in generally not taxed. But guess who does the most amount of investing in the country? Top 1%. Now I suspect there are going to be some capitalism fanboys in chat who are going to be like, yo, wait a minute. We need to keep growing so that we have jobs for new graduates because jobs for new graduates are important. Yeah, that's true. As a new graduate and one who happens to study environmental studies, I'm really hoping that I'm going to be able to find a job in the future. But there are ways to ensure that everyone has access to jobs. If, for example, we accepted shorter working hours in a week and also got reduced salary, so something like maybe you work 3 days a week and you get paid for those 3 days, then one job that provides for one person now can provide for two people in the future. And as we've seen, money doesn't really correspond to happiness. I personally believe happiness is just wherever you choose to find it. So I guess what I'm saying is that we have a choice. We can choose to keep the economy growing for some mysterious reason that people still aren't really fully able to articulate, or we can choose to ensure the survival of the planet, the healthiness of our natural ecosystems, and the general well-being of the populations across the world that are threatened by the climate crisis and other environmental ills. But at some point, the economy is going to stop growing anyway. Nothing grows forever. Nothing. There's a reason why we stopped growing roughly about 20 years of age. Because if we kept growing at the rate that we did when we were kids, then eventually you'd be something like 4 or 5 meters tall. You know how many resources are required to feed some dude who's 5 meters tall? And do you know what happens to folks who are 5 meters tall and can't find enough food? They die. Well, it's the same with the economy. Once we run out of resources to feed the engine, it's gonna crumble anyway. And at this rate, it looks like we're going to run out of resources pretty soon. But we don't have to accept this. Every day we choose the tenets and principles that we support based on how we act, who we vote for, what we talk about, what we buy. Although I'm a bit skeptical about the what we buy stuff because I feel like it's just capitalists giving you the idea that money has power when actually there are other things that have power like political will. And at the end of the day, what we accept. The recent case of Monica Bay is a very obvious example of something where we've done things a certain way for a long time, but society just says, no, we're not doing this anymore. And we change. So, how do you feel about all this? Do we still need economic growth? Is the world going to end? And are we going to be happier by the time we're 60 as compared to now? I don't have the answers, but I think it's a discussion worth having. So anyway, thank you for watching. I'm going to try and get more videos up in the summer. It's going to be a good summer for me, I hope. And if there are things that you're interested in seeing or talking about, drop me a line and I'll be happy to put it in the video. Alright, if you like this video, please like it. If you want to see more, subscribe. Smash that like button. Send it to your MPs. You know the drill. Damn, it's super hot here. I feel like I'm in Singapore. Alright, peace.